call our Sandy City Council work session to order. I'll do a quick review of tonight's council meeting agenda in case anybody has any questions they want to present for staff preparation before we get into it. Looks like under first, I guess under public comments, we had anybody sign up for public comment either online or in person tonight?
No, we've not, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll have a presentation. Very excited. A police officer oath of office for Quentin Carter. We'll then do an introduction of our new public works director, which we're very excited for, Jimmy Coker. Under our consent agenda, we have our city council meeting minutes from January 3rd. Under new business, we have Hoodview disposal and recycling rate increase request, as well as resolution 2021-36, which is for SandyNet construction RFP alternative procurement method, mainly dealing with our wastewater treatment facility. Any questions on any of those items for staff before we jump into this? All right, great. Of course, as usual, we'll close out with reports from our city manager and our committee and council reports. With that, under our city council work session, we have the tents and unauthorized structured and commercial zones discussion with staff presentations tonight. This comes off of some of our conversations that we've had at previous Sandy City Council meetings about some of these temporary non-approved structures and stuff that kind of pop up throughout town during the course of time, especially during the pandemic. So with that, Jordan, you want to kind of start us off here?
Sure, Mayor, you introduced it well, so I think I'll just turn it over to Kelly. Who's gonna...
Oh, don't take the easy way out.
he has a slideshow that was in the packet as well, so you can follow along and see some of these structures that we're talking about. But like you said, this was a topic that the council asked to put on a future work session, talk about enforcement of especially the tents in light of the covered structured grants that the city's been doing and pursuing. And so, there's a number of questions about other structures that may be out there that are unpermitted or not authorized as we're doing this work for permitted Sandy style structures. So Kelly's going to walk through that. And then there's some other broader policy questions around code enforcement that if there's time that we could discuss, but we wanted to make sure to accommodate the council's request for the tents first. So Kelly O'Neill.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, so I went back. I wasn't at your January 3rd meeting, but I went back and I listened to the video recording to kind of hear what you guys were talking about and your concerns. That prompted kind of the staff report that was put together, and then also the presentation that I'll go through. And then also in attendance tonight is Police Chief Roberts. So if you have any more broad general questions about code enforcement in general, especially related to the code enforcement position that is housed under the police department, I think the police chief would probably be the best person to answer those questions. However, in saying that, our department does work very closely with Officer Moody because there's a lot of relationship to, code issues that are in regards to Chapter 17, which is the development code. So jumping right into the slideshow. So if you want to advance the slide, Jeff. So yeah, the first slide just kind of explains the reason why we're having the meeting tonight was from your January 3rd discussion. The one thing I do want to kind of drive home, which I believe you're all familiar with, is that traditionally, at least since 2011, when I started with the city of Sandy, and I think it predates that a number of years at least. Carl or Councilor Exner and Councilor Pietzel know more about this than I do, but it's mainly been approached through a complaint-driven process. And so the code enforcement actions that Code Enforcement Officer Moody takes and then my staff takes are primarily through complaint-driven. So we don't drive around Sandy looking for issues. We usually wait until a citizen or a business owner makes the complaint. Now, I will say there's a few exceptions to that. Those are if it's really egregious or if they're related to sign issues, because we've had a lot of issues with business owners in the past and even recently putting up numerous temporary signs, so it gets very cluttered. And usually when that does happen, we do address it and don't wait for any complaints. If you want to go to the next slide. And it just stop me at any time or ask questions, please. So one of the things that I heard in early January was some frustration, which I totally understand and appreciate in regards to the Sanlandia site, especially in consideration that we just contributed a lot of money to that new covered structure. And so what happened, I'm not going to go into the full backstory, but what happened, Sanlandia was approved with one temporary tent and temporary bathrooms. And then in anticipation of not knowing if it was going to be successful or not, unfortunately, when that approval occurred, there wasn't any sunset date or anything tied to removal or upgrade of those structures or bathrooms. And then in 2018, a second tent was applied for and we approved. That approval, the 2018 approval, was for the tent that was still in place after the permanent structure was installed. So they had land use approval for that tent to remain. However, the property owner kind of let the tent get into a pretty bad state of disrepair. It was tattered, tearing. He took it down. And so we reached out to our attorney's office and consultation with them and the final order, it was determined that we could enforce full removal of the structure and the blue drums, as you see on the picture on the left-hand side there. So we reached out to the Sanlandia owner, and on January 24th, it was reported that they were removed. So now he does not have a land use approval. So if we see a new tent be erected there, it would be non-permitted and we could go through code enforcement procedures to remove it. So I just want to kind of update you on that, since that was one of the biggest discussion topics on January 3rd. Can you advance? So
just real quick, I just want to understand. So, but in 2018, there was an approval of it for like a non-conditional use, or I mean, what was the thought behind the approval?
So the original approval, I'll just take even a step back beyond that. The original approval was done by my predecessor. And I think it was largely because we wanted to, I think if a few of you were on council at the time, we actually had a sunset date for food carts. And then that was actually removed. So then they were allowed to remain permanently. I think the error was that there was no sunset date put in the final decision for the temporary bathrooms or tent.
So this is an oversight.
I think it was just an oversight.
So you feel like the intent wasn't for it to always remain as a permanent structure. It just was an oversight.
I don't know, because I wasn't the decision maker at that point.
We're just conjecture at this
Now, in 2017, what I can tell you is we issued a final order. It's public record for the tent to be allowed. So as long as the food cart owner upgraded the bathrooms.
Okay.
What then happened is the food cart owner was not very happy with that result of that final order. He talked to several council members and the mayor at the time. And then in 2018, he reapplied and we allowed the tent without the condition of the bathrooms being upgraded.
Effective conversation.
No.
On this one.
A question.
I don't recall that conversation.
Question, what was the upgrading the bathrooms condition that was trying to be placed?
Yeah, the condition I tried to implement in 2017 was the temporary tent would be allowed on the condition that the bathrooms are upgraded to a permanent structure.
Permanent structure.
Yes.
And my second follow-up question is, given that food carts are, all over the place now and obviously successful, and do we have in our code any food cart code language that requires, a gazebo or some other permanent structure for people to eat their food under, or bathrooms or inadequate parking?
Yeah, it's a
Those
great.
three things are.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the code does have requirements for parking. However, if it's in the downtown, there's
No parking required.
no parking for commercial, not for residential, but for commercial. And actually that's been very successful so far, because we've seen 3 sites with development that would have otherwise not occurred, according to the property owners that are currently under construction in our downtown. There is no requirement to have seating at the food cart, and therefore there's no requirement to have a covered structure. There is a requirement to have a bathroom or an agreement. I'm kind of forgetting the distance, but I believe it's within a 1/4 mile for there to be a bathroom, and that's mainly for the cart owners or their employees, so they can use a bathroom within close proximity.
I don't think quarter mile hits the Department of Health.
No.
requirement.
That I'm just stating what's in the code currently.
So, yeah, right. So in regards to the current code though, was there, and now we're getting a little off topic, so we need to get back on topic. But I do want to ask my question though, which is, has there been any updates to the fact that our commercial property owners are, I like to think, enhanced with the ability to participate with the Sandy style? But we're looking at pictures with orange and all kinds of colors and everything else on these food carts. Has there been any discussion or anything added to the code which kind of fixes the fact that your typical brick and mortar has to have a certain appearance, but these guys seem to be able to come in with a food cart of any shape, color, size, and park it along our highway?
So back when we adopted the code, I believe it was in 2015 or 2016, there was a lot of consideration to those items. And actually, our food cart code does have some limitations that are not currently in most of the other jurisdictions around the state of Oregon. And there is a size limit for the cart. And the one unique thing I think to our code compared to a lot of codes in the state of Oregon is we don't allow a unit with a motor. So it has to be a trailer. And that gets rid of kind of your uglier RV type converted food carts that
Do you
you
have any
see.
idea what Happy Valley's code says? And the only reason
I do not.
Okay, because the only reason I almost wonder if they have to screen it and it has to be part of like a brick and mortar deal, because I don't know if I've through, and maybe it's just economics, the market, but I haven't seen any other food car type operation just off the top of my head driving through Happy Valley. And so I guess I would be curious to know, just looking forward, because there's other projects looking to come into town and everything else. It would be interesting to have a work session, because we do got to move forward, but a work session or something for this council to just have a talk on what our general policy for development of food carts and everything's going to be. Because I feel like
so what
there's
I
some
can-
nuances.
What I can tell you, which I think is kind of answering the second part of your question, is that since the adoption of the food cart regulations in chapter 1774, we've never modified those.
Okay. Yeah.
So they are adopted as originally adopted back in 2015, 16.
Probably time to look at.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, during that time, it was all over Facebook. This room was packed
Yes, I
out
remember that.
with
Yeah.
people, and it was like, one of the hottest topics since I've been on council about,
Yeah.
How dare we think of not allowing a food cart? Right?
Yeah.
Like everyone was a foodsy person, right? So
Yeah.
there was a lot of pressure from the community to
Yeah.
make sure that we got something that was trial in at the time. Now, I
Yes.
agree that not all of these things were maybe
Well,
could have done differently.
It's really easy for us here, 3 or 4 years in the future, to look back, right? But you're right, there was a lot of stuff going on.
I don't
Don't
think
mess
there's
with
any
food carts and
support.
dogs.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would want to move them. It's more just.
Yeah.
No, I
where do
know.
We need to
Bring-
standardize. How do we
Yeah.
improve the
Exactly.
experience, make it safer for everybody?
But when it was coming in, it was like, you're putting on these restrictions, so I'm not gonna do it. And the community was like, take all the restrictions away, so they'll put them in.
I remember there was a vast want for food carts.
Yeah.
That was for sure.
So, anyway.
Yeah, the one thing that is kind of ugly on them that I don't believe there's any solution to currently in the food cart market is the gigantic hood that comes
Hood.
out of the top of them.
Hmm.
There's no solution because it has to vent vertically for fire reasons and stuff. So those things I think are going to be on there no matter what, and they're very unsightly.
Okay.
Yeah, but they are safety features, so.
They are,
Yeah.
correct.
Yep.
Okay, so there's that one. So the
You don't
discussion,
think The sewer pipe is unsightly, more so than the hood?
that is too, yeah. I don't disagree with that.
We should talk about the whole area.
The whole thing.
A lot of history there.
I mean, to be honest, though, the funny thing is, it's funny that you bring that up. If you had went and toured, so I toured, I think, like 10 food cart pods in 2016 to kind of decide what we didn't want.
Yeah.
And a few of them out in like East Portland, West Gresham.
You can
Ours are
tell
a
what
lot-
you didn't want.
Ours are a lot nicer than those, I can tell you that right now. So getting back to the slideshow, the short-term discussion tonight is giving staff direction on some preferred enforcement procedures for tents and unauthorized structures. When I wrote the staff report last week, there was 5 properties with violations. The Junker building, which is the blue building
Yeah,
right here down the street.
they're not even in business. What are they doing?
That's actually the Smith building. This
Oh,
is the building
sorry.
next
Yes,
to that.
Junkerville. Yeah.
There's the pictures in your staff report show them. There's one small structure that's non-Sandy style, doesn't have a permit and is not secured to the ground. There's a second structure there that's made out of, it looks like scrap metal that they've kind of built around one of the back doors. So there's 2 non-permitted structures at that site in the rear in the
That's
parking
key.
lot.
They're both in the rear. So they're not visible on 26, but they
I
are.
don't see it.
The smaller one is actually visible on 26. The one of them is, one of them's not. The auto ski shop, I think you're probably all familiar with that one. It's pretty unsightly with a lot of like random bungee cords, it looks like. And I think that one might even be partially in the right of way.
So on Junkers, this carport, I'm basically looking at a self-installed carport on the rear side of that building.
Correct.
Okay.
That's one of them, yeah.
Yeah, I saw the other one. Yeah.
I thought the presentation slides.
We didn't.
I didn't put them in because they were included in the staff report.
Okay.
Auto ski shop, I think you're all familiar with that one. It's like PVC piping with bungee cords. I don't even really know how it's standing, but
Still, for
Exactly.
a while. And it only shows up in the winter and it's.
yeah,
Yeah. It's crazy.
must have a lot of directions for installation on it.
I can't believe it's still up from all the windstorms and everything.
Yeah.
Paola's Pizza Barn, there's another one of the, it's basically, I think it's the same kit or the same structure as one of the ones behind the Junker building. The property owners are the same, and the structure looks the same. It's visible from Highway 26, but just barely, and it has brown tarps that surround it that I believe it houses the firewood for the fireplace, I think, in the building. And then there's a second structure behind the building, which is an assortment of vinyl and metal. And again, I don't really know how it's standing, but it was a homemade project, it looks like to me. So there's 2 on the north side of that building as
And
well.
that's on number 8, that last picture is on the back side.
Correct. They both are.
Well, no, number 7's not.
Both of the structures at Paola's are to the north of the building currently.
Okay.
One of them you can see from the highway if you're really looking, because you can kind of see it through the Les Schwab parking lot.
Okay.
And then the Sandy Community Action Center,
Yeah, I know this one.
which is, I have to say is probably the most attractive of all these violations that we know of. However, it doesn't meet Sandy style. It never received a building permit.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it might actually be built over the property line, which we don't really typically get involved in if there's no permit pulled because it's a civil dispute between property owners.
Mhm.
However, that property with the grass field there that you can see, that's going to be developed in the near future.
So something could arise.
Something will arise when they probably do a survey. But yeah, that structure is not permitted and the action center is aware of it.
Yeah. Mike and I have no interest of getting out there. and moving it. Yeah.
And then we did have a fifth site, which is the Tura. Some people refer to it as the lumberyard. I'm going to refer to it as the former home of True Value, I believe is what was there back in the
Lumberyard,
2000s.
lumber.
Yeah.
That structure, and you can see there's a lot of, I guess, what I would call junk underneath it.
I said that too.
We reached out to that property owner several times over the last 6 months about cleaning up the back of the lumberyard property. They have removed some old broken cars and some weeds and some other junk. And then I did let them know that you'd be talking about this tonight, and they jumped on it last week and removed the illegal structure.
Wow. Okay.
And so it is gone.
That's nice.
So that's in the slideshow. Actually, I was going to show you the update on that.
So this is the one you call true value on the list?
Correct.
Oh, I was thinking.
That's why it was
I
crossed
thought it
out.
was this one right here, the true value.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
This is the
Ace,
Sandy
Ace
lumber.
Hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ace Hardware. No, yeah, I think this used to be True Value actually, but
Well, growing up, it was Sandy Lumber.
Yeah.
I know the owner. I went to school with them.
yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that's the same site.
All right.
There was a brewery in there for a hot minute.
So,
Sandy River.
all right, keep going. So lead our discussion here. So basically you need feedback.
So can you
from
go to the
us.
next? Can you go to the next slide, Jeff? So here's that site. They still have a lot of cleanup to do, but I was pleasantly surprised that not only did they remove the tent, but they actually got rid of a lot of the junk that was stored under it. So we're making progress.
We need to ask more questions.
105, right? Okay.
Right.
Next slide, please. So for the short-term discussion, I think, which is the most relevant for tonight, however, we can go into more depending on time, as Jordan said. The first question I had is, do you want staff to pursue all the violations at the 4 sites that we're aware of? And how much time is reasonable before citations are issued? And really what that question is getting at more than anything else is how many warnings do you want to give them?
You just ask that in public record so they know how long to wait. You say 3, so they go, well, we only have 1.
Yeah, so also explain it in the next couple slides if you want to go through them. Is the code right now has probably 15 to 25 different procedures on code enforcement. There's a lot of good reasoning for that, is because the different violations take different amount of times to remedy. Like if you have a car that's broken down in the right of way, that's a lot quicker to remedy than a more complex building code violation. So there's a lot of good reason for why there's a lot of different procedures, but it's not like a one size fits all approach. There's no, like, this is how we do violations for every different violation is kind of unique, to be honest.
Maybe to kick us off, I would, the council sort of, the last meeting especially indicating, a move towards enforcement, especially in light of the conversation around covered structures and making the town look nicer. We've already had 2 success stories, I could say, with Sandlandia. With Kelly and I speaking to the owner and seeing some movement there. And then the Turas, we met with them. They have this long-term plan to develop that property, and they're actually going to be coming in for a pre-op relatively soon for another concept. But seeing movement there in the last weeks, knowing that the council is having this meeting and talking about enforcement is effective. So that kind of gives you a sign that maybe this showing some legislative sort of interest in this and enforcement interest from the council level has been helpful for staff to be able to use that as sort of a stick, for lack of a better word. And some of these are pretty visible, and I know we all have relationships with the property owners and business owners in town, and do our best to kind of work with them. But knowing that we would like to see some action, especially that other businesses are complying now too.
Can I
Please.
first up?
Please.
I think, and the reason I brought this up early on a couple of occasions is really to try to preserve that look and feel, what we call Sandy style, but it's more than that. It's really that downtown corridor. They put our best face forward. So for me, that is the end goal. Personally, I was talking to some of the staff earlier. I'm all in favor of enforcing every rule that we have, every law that we have. And if we don't want to enforce it, I'm in favor of removing those things. But that's a longer term strategy. In the shorter term, it's about improving the downtown corridor and working with, you've taken autos. I think I brought them up when we were talking covered structures a while ago. They have a need there. What they have is terrible solution for their need. I could see economic development, urban renewal, enforcement all coming together to help the owners craft a better solution, whatever it might be, whether it's a structure or just figuring out their work model, where they do these things. But to me, it's a terrible eyesore, just like the old, it's one of many. It's not the only one. And I think I love what, just by asking, I think that's just, we put a little light on this. We pay a special attention to what's visible on our corridor and and then take some longer term plans. That's my thoughts.
Okay, Carl.
A little history here in that there was a time when I know some of these people still, and this goes back several years, were notified that some of these issues were wrong with a letter threatening several things. And I've heard several probably exaggerated, but at least very irritated business owners that were concerned about having to remove things without a whole lot of understanding and a lot of warning. And then through a whole number of conversations and differences in people who are in Kelly's position, we decided to back off a lot of that. And now you have, I receive complaints all the time from other business people saying,
Mhm.
I got to do this. How come you're getting this person a free card? And so what you're ending up with is a kind of a swing back and forth in my perspective of, and I think that's some of the business people are looking at the same sort of scenario of going from a pretty strong, armed and strong armed attempt to get people to change their mind to kind of backing off, hoping that that will change as time goes by and going to be more and more lenient, and you end up with people getting frustrated by the leniency. I firmly believe that everybody needs to play the game correctly. If we have a ordinance or a rule, it needs to be obeyed. But I think there's also a lot to be said about, and I know that our code enforcement guy is a lot in this respect. At least I've seen several examples in the last year or so, I'll just put it that way, that he has come to us and or to some problem and said, we need to get it figured out, we need to solve it, let's do that. That's, to me, makes a lot of help. This example of the Torres place behind the junk pile there, that's really, I think, a good example of how to make things change. But there comes a time when some businesses just don't change, just won't. And I think that we need to decide, and I'm inclined to think it's a matter of contact, start out gently, and if that doesn't work, then maybe a little more formal, and then if that doesn't work, then maybe let's talk about the timeframes, but at least not let them go month after month, year after year, and then have to deal with fallout with other business people. So I'm thinking, start out slow, do the wise thing about interacting with the business owner, try to get a resolution, solving a problem without the violations, and then moving step by step to a violation. And I think eventually city has to do something about it. Maybe there's a lien on the property and we remove the offending eyesore. And so I'm thinking we need to be relatively quick about it, but enough that we can see some sort of attempt by us to say, you got to clean your mess up.
So I agree with all that. One thing I'd like to highlight too is it's always like the carrot and the stick, right? And we talk a lot about the stick, but the honest truth is that the city of Sandy has tremendous carrots, available to these business owners. As I look at a lot of these structures, I notice that they're next to a lot of them are next to a building that has not participated in the Sandy style and facade improvement programs, which I think could address some of these additional things that they're trying to accomplish with these structures. We have the outdoor covered structure program. Now I know one of these business owners did apply within the program, but that's an example, right, of another carrot that we have. And so I guess the direction that I would have, and I agree with Carl on all of that, but I would like to see us in our interactions discuss and present the carrot, as well. And, to really, make understand, hey, what are we, so-and-so business owner with this structure, what are we trying to accomplish here? How is this benefiting your business? And, depending on those responses, well, and Kelly, I've worked with you now enough to know you're really good at this, all right, well, if that's what you're trying to accomplish, did you think about, the Sandy facade improvement or the outdoor cover structure program? And so again, I want to rubber stamp everything that Carl said there, but I do think that I'd like to see a little bit more of a proactive, helpful attitude too, that says you're in violation, but you're not in violation because you're a jerk. It's probably because you're trying to run the best darn business you possibly can. What can we do to get you into compliance in a way that allows your business to move forward successfully? That's kind of the general culture and attitude I'd like to see around it. Yeah, go ahead.
And along those same lines, Kelly, if you wanted a date, and I don't know how the rest of council will feel about this, but I'd like to see them April 1st. That gets some of these businesses through winter. It also gives them a little bit of time to organize work parties, figure out secondary places to store their stuff, get things moved. But yeah, I think that there's great opportunities for these guys, whether it's in facade or covered structure, or if they need some help figuring out something, obviously we want all of these businesses to be successful, but they've also been in non-compliance for some time. So, so in saying that, I feel like the city has been quite lenient in allowing them to do that. So, and I feel first part of spring, you know, if you look at an autos who's running a business in the winter, the bulk of their business is in the winter time. I'm okay leaving that there until his winter business is done, and then that allows him, you know, an opportunity to fix that. So for me, I'd kind of like to see those dealt with by about that time. If we want to create an end date where, hey, we want some compliance or movement in this direction.
At least for these obvious.
Yeah.
ones,
Mhm.
I have a question. Like I'm looking at slide 8 there at Paola's,
2 months.
with the double roof and stuff. Does that meet the Sandy style? That, because obviously the brown tarps are a problem, but it's got the steep, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's a great question. Most likely not. It doesn't, and that's something that's hard to tell without having the specs for the structure. So we could always ask for the specs. That'd be a good idea to do. But yeah, it would have to be. So one of the hard parts with the Sandy style, which I think I do want to visit at some point in the future, because I think it's a little bit too hard, is that not only does it have to be a 612 roof pitch or a 412, depending on the zone, but then we have a color palette for the metal roofing. So if you don't order it or match it to the Medallion Industries color palette, you're not in compliance. So there's some complexities that I think are overly onerous for some of these small little structures like
Where I
this.
was going with that is, you know, I was looking at I actually bought a gazebo little kit from Costco for pretty cheap, and then I ended up selling it. But, you know, it had a metal roof and yeah, maybe not the right color, brown or whatever, you know, but what I'd like to see here is that, you know, from what I can see, a lot of these are these kind of gazebo type structures. And is there, you know, when people can't afford and I agree, first of all, with everything everybody said about the carrots and the sticks and stuff. But, you know, when people can't really even afford the $40,000 to $60,000 gazebo that we've got proposed, which is nice, is there some, you know, off the shelf options for them that they can kind of run with themselves, I guess is the question.
Yeah, and I think,
Yeah.
yeah, so the answer would be currently in how the Sandy style is written is no.
Well, there might
I
be
thi-
some out there that are off the shelf that comply with it. We should
Maybe,
look.
probably not many. And the reason I say that is because for a commercial structure, it has to have footings and actually be in the ground. So it's a little bit different than
Okay.
like your residential structure that you can
Okay.
put up. The second part is the Sandy style requirement for the base to have the rock. That can be
Yeah.
very difficult on these kind of structures. So I think one takeaway from your comment there that I think would be a really good idea to explore is that would we want to create some standards for these sort of structures in the future so that you could have a kit that would be approved for Sandy style?
And I see that, and I hear where you're going. For me personally, I would almost rather create a pot of money, some sort of grant program that would allow them to comply. My fear is going down a road of if there is like something off the shelf that they can buy. Again, all of these businesses are right down Main Street. And you start this trend. And while those Costco gazebos look really good, I don't disagree with that. But you start a trend of every business in town putting those out in front of their storefront. And that makes me cringe. So I would rather entertain a grant or some sort of funding program, maybe for some of these businesses to apply to, recognizing that it is a financial burden. That
Yeah,
still
and right
fits,
along the
that still
highway,
fits in with
yeah.
that Sandy style, but allows them, you know, some sort of financial.
My only concern with that is that's exactly what we were trying to accomplish with the outdoor structured program. And then you end up with the most beautiful structures in the world, right? But that's
Yeah.
part of the issue with the Sandy style is,
Well-
you know, it's in order to comply with the Sandy style, it is a hurdle that our business owners have to get over.
But I think there's a difference between like right along, you know, autos thing and this Payless thing that I can't see
Totally.
from the road.
I
So
agree with
that's
that.
where
Totally agree.
maybe we have
Yep.
flexibility on the
Totally
standard.
agree.
Yeah,
And
I
I-
agree.
So we're missing a little bit here. One is that there, besides the Sandy style, there's safety issues.
Mhm.
Some of these structures, I would really hate to be inside them if more than a puff of wind came by and I was sitting underneath them. So I suspect that some of this stuff can be controlled by the safety issues, things like feet need to be in the ground, and some sort of concrete and so on and so forth. And so there's that. And then the other thing that I'm thinking of is there's a fair amount of time where a business wants to do something temporarily. So the idea that Kathleen's talking about with maybe something that complies with Sandy style, but maybe is a temporary thing for maybe a afternoon of selling clothing. I'm trying to figure out a issue. So there's some of that that could be incorporated. Maybe we could find a way to make a temporary, maybe whatever that definition of what a temporary is, we do that with signs to some degree. And maybe make that as part of that, temporary structure that people could stay up underneath the rain, protect their supplies and such so they can sell them, or however that might be defined. So there's some of that I think can be incorporated there too. And then finally, I really like the idea of about 3 months or so. That's what you're thinking about, I think, Lori.
2 months.
If it's April,
Flexible.
and as a time frame, we need to get that solved somehow. Some of these have been here for, we're talking years. And I know that we don't want to tick off all of our business people, but on the other hand, you got about half of them already ticked because they aren't getting the cleanup that they want. Otherwise, they'll do their own messy put ups. So I think there's some things to think about. Maybe staff could put together something with that in mind. I do think a temporary facility might be something worth understanding and figuring out how long temporary might be and all those sorts of things, much like a temporary sign.
All right. Feel like you got your direction?
I think so. One thing I will say, and I don't want to sound like I'm putting down any of the comments, but we're just very busy right now with the comp plan and the clear and objective audit we just sent out and different things. So I just want to make sure everybody clearly understands that the likelihood of me bringing something before the council for an additional code modification, it's probably not going to be in the next few months.
Seems like priority one would be to get rid of these problems.
Yep.
You like,
Code we
with
have.
the April 1st
Yeah.
deadline is our
Yeah.
communication
Right.
out,
Because I,
help
Does that, you
compliance.
feel like that's adequate, Gordon? Does
Yeah.
that seem more adequate? Okay.
And I definitely get some of the comments that were shared. And I think that is actually part of my frustration as well, is that when the structure is not visible from any right away, can we relax the Sandy style? And I
Yeah.
think the answer to that is yes, but codifying that is going to take some time.
Yep.
Yeah, so is that something we put on a future work session, maybe 3 months, 6 months from now, or
Yep.
something to talk about, bring back Sandy style and talk about some of these
Think so.
essential updates to it?
Figure out, Kelly, when a good time for that would be.
I think 3 to 6 months would be great.
Well, Jeff,
Any
tell him
sooner
we'll-
would be
we'll Figure
fine.
it out on the calendar and get it on there. All right, cool. Well, that is our work session. So we have a little bit of time to hang out and have some fun before our council meeting. Thanks, everybody. 7 o'clock, and I love disrupting Dawn. So we'll go ahead and call the Sandy City Council meeting to order. So, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for our city council meeting. Per normal, I always start with a review of the night's agenda. We'll start off with any public comment. Has any public comment been issued?
No, Mayor.
All right, thank you. We'll then move forward into presentations. We're all incredibly excited for the oath of office for our new officer, Quentin Carter. We'll also have an introduction of our Public Works Director. We're also incredibly excited to meet here tonight, and Jenny Coker. We'll then move forward into our consent agenda for Sandy City Council meeting minutes from January 3rd. Under new business, we have Hoodview disposal and recycling rate increase request, as well as resolution 2021-36, SandyNet construction RFP for an alternative procurement method. We'll then wrap up our evening's meeting with a report from our city manager, Jordan Wheeler, as well as some committee and council reports from the rest of us. With that, Jeff, would you like to call the roll?
Yes, Councilor Petzold. Here. Councilor Smallwood.
Here.
Councilor Sheldon.
Here.
Councilor Walker.
Here.
Councilor Exner.
Here.
Councilor Hokinson.
Here.
Mayor Pulliam.
Here. Thank you for that, Jeff. With that, I'll just, I'll call to see if there's any proposed changes to tonight's agenda. All right, seeing none, I'm assuming we're still on for no public comment this evening, Jeff.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, with that, the exciting part, let's get to our presentations. Presentation, police officer, oath of office, Officer Quentin Carter. Will you join me, please, with Chief Roberts?
Mayor and council, it's an honor to introduce you, our newest member of our team, Officer Quentin Carter.
If you guys want, family, if you guys want to come stand back here, you guys like to.
Pictures or anything?
Yep.
Video?
Yep.
Come on up.
This is our favorite.
Yeah, after.
All right, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Quentin Carter, do solemnly swear
I, Quentin Carter, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Oregon and the laws therefore,
and the Constitution of the State of Oregon and the laws therefore,
and I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
and I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially
discharge my duties of a police officer
discharge my duties of a police officer
during my continuance here then.
during my continuance here Therein.
Not you. To the best of my ability, so help me God.
to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations, welcome.
I move that we take a minute and have a photo.
Yeah, let's do a photo. You want to do all, let's do all of us in a photo if you'd like. And yeah.
Shake his hand.
Yeah.
We can do that after.
Council, you want to join me for a photo?
And. So we move to
That wasn't
get the seal.
I think.
Mayor, I
met for their family.
Yeah.
Well, they, Jeff had asked about all this. This is a new thing we're gonna start.
I
We're
didn't
gonna stand
get the
here.
memo on the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. We're Sandy.
Looks great.
Hey, Mom and Dad?
I'll get out of here.
You're welcome. Yay.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Excellent. 2, 3.
Excellent.
Sorry. Big family. We got it.
That's great. That's awesome.
Takes a village. Kind of family.
Let's pretend no one's there. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Privilege.
And welcome to our community. Thank you
Yes.
for your service.
Yes.
Yes.
Have a good evening.
You're more welcome to stay. I mean, it's riveting.
Oh, yeah. Come on now.
Come back another
All
time.
right. Jenny, we can't promise you a bunch of photos and stuff, but we're
I mean,
excited.
yeah,
But we will move the podium out.
All
Or
right.
at least it just.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just grabbed that. Wasn't even.
Oh, you don't have to go up there.
Oh, we
I don't know how.
he has to go up there now.
I don't know how you guys want to, we'd love to, we're looking forward to meeting Jenny. You're the next on our.
You want,
She's got it. It's over there.
Well, Council, I'm very pleased to introduce Jenny Coker as our new Public Works Director. Started on Thursday, February 3rd. We're very excited to have her. She brings just a whole bunch of wealth of experience, especially with her civil engineering background, both public and private sector experience, most recently for the city of Portland as a project and program manager at their wastewater treatment plant. So obviously our #1 priority here is our wastewater system improvements, and she's got tons of experience and knowledge on that, a lot of connections in the industry. She's diving headfirst into it here just on her 3rd day with the stuff that's already in front of her. She's of course replacing Mike Walker, who's been here for 36 years. So big shoes to fill. Fortunately, Mike is still with us until March 1st, is his official retirement date, which is great. Provides a lot of opportunity to overlap, transfer some of that knowledge, and kind of doing some shadowing and division of labor type of stuff. So this has been such just a joy for me to find somebody with her qualifications and experience. I think she's just going to be tremendously beneficial and what a great asset for the city of Sandy. And I know we just got a lot of big projects ahead of us that she can really help us out with. So I know she's very eager to get going and is excited to be here. Welcome to say a few words too. Introduce yourself. Anything you want to add? Now that you're at the
You'll get
podium.
used to that.
Well,
He talks a lot.
thank you so much, Jordan. Jordan did a really wonderful job just selling this position and the legacy that's going to be built for the future of Sandy and the importance of the investments. And I found that incredibly attractive. There is a lot going on, and I do have big shoes to fill. The welcome could not have been better. Working with Mike every day is a joy. I'm very, very pleased to be here. I've done a similar project. You may have seen it at the List Center wastewater treatment plant where it was a treatment plant right in the center of the town. So visible everywhere, a lot of screening, really beautiful place, a lot of things that were done. Mike told me to mention that, but I'm really pleased to be here. I'm pleased to learn and be part of this team and look forward to working with you, and just really grateful to be here tonight.
We're super excited to have you.
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Super excited.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you and welcome to our community. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, with that, we're on to our consent agenda of our city council meeting minutes from our January 3rd meeting. Unless there's conversation and discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda item.
I'll
including the
second.
minutes.
There's a motion by Councilor Walker, a second by Councilor Peitzel. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. New business, Hoodview disposal and recycling rate increase request. Jordan, Tyler, both of you. Who wants to give this?
Tyler Deans will be doing the staff report. We also have Jason Hudson and Joe Wunderlich from Waste Connections with us tonight too.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be brief and then I'll turn it over to the Hoodview / Waste Connections team for any of your questions. But we've received a rate increase request from Hoodview. The staff report that was presented to you in the council packet incorrectly referenced a section for a special rate adjustment that should have referenced the annual rate adjustment. This is an annual rate adjustment, but it is a delayed annual rate adjustment that's typically done in September, but with the transition of the franchise, it was pushed back a little bit. So the methodology for calculating that rate increase is as prescribed by the franchise agreement, just an incorrect reference to a special rate adjustment in the staff report. The last rate increase was done in March 2021. And you may recall that was a rate increase that was rather large and split up over two different implementations, September of 2020 and March of 2021. Over a year now since that last rate increase has taken effect. The rate increase as presented tonight is 3.78%, or on average about $1.21 for the 35-gallon cart service. And there is plans to bring back another rate increase September of 2022 for a January 2023 implementation, which would fall back into the normal annual cycle of rate increases happening every January. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jason and or Joe, whoever wants to jump in and introduce themselves and answer any questions the council has.
Can I ask a quick question
Yes,
first?
absolutely.
So annually,
Correct.
we're doing rate increases every year.
The franchise fee, or the franchise agreement rather, allows for annual rate adjustments with a prescribed formula based on CPI and other operating costs that may.
So they're not
Increase.
required, right? And do we know like the last 4 or 5 year run on this? And I know there's been
That was
things
gonna
in
be
the
my question.
recycle market
Yeah,
and everything.
I
else.
believe prior to the last two, which were March 2021 and September of 2020, I believe the one prior to that was in 2018, but I don't have the month. I would assume a January effective date based on the franchise agreement, but it may have been a special adjustment at that point. I'm not quite sure.
But that's what I'm kind of confusing, building on what Lori said, was that I thought we were doing annuals and we did a September 2020
2020.
and a March 2021.
Yep.
And now we're doing basically a February 2022 and being told that there's going to be another one in September. So for 2 years, we're doing twice a year ones. Can you
So,
kind of just give us a
yeah.
background on how this is
Absolutely.
becoming double
When
rate increases?
when the franchise was previously owned by Hoodview, they did a special rate adjustment request in September of 2020 due to significant cost increase in the recycling market. That increase, because of the size of the request, was split into 2 separate rate increases to be more manageable during that implementation. No rate increase has been presented in the last almost year and a half now, since that September 2020. The council adopted that 2-prong rate increase at one council meeting with 2 effective dates. So there's been no rate increase presented and adopted since that September meeting. Since then, obviously, costs have continued to increase. The franchise has been turned over now to Waste Connections in September of 2021, which made the normal process of getting a rate adjustment or the annual adjustment in September, right when the franchise turned over, pretty difficult to have that, presented and implemented in that sort of normal timeframe. We got the request in our office in late January, I believe, for this, and so we've got it on the council agenda for tonight. We'll come back in 2 weeks at the February 22nd meeting to do the actual adoption resolution and adoption for these rates. This is just sort of a introduction to new business tonight, not asking for a vote. And this will get us back on that annual cycle of, this is a 3-month delay or 2-month, 3-month delay, I guess. It should have been a January 2022. It's going to be effective in March, and then we'll be on the cycle going forward for January effective dates.
So just for clarification, I'm sorry, because I didn't raise my hand, the last ask was in September of 2020, but the last rate increase was March of
March.
2021.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
Last ask, one ask, 2 phases.
right.
And
Correct.
then there's going to be another phase in this September?
There will be a presentation of a requested rate increase in September for a January effective date. And that's outlined in the franchise agreement. Typically, I believe it specifically says request by November 1st. So we'll do the ask in September to be in accordance with the franchise agreement with the January effective date.
So why are we doing it now?
Yeah.
And then again, why not just do one more later on instead of this 2 thing that just, no offense. feels-
They'll
No,
get more
I'll
money
let
this time.
the Waste Connection staff go ahead and answer that. As
I do have a question for staff and legal. Given my read of the franchise agreement, the fact they missed the November request date, it specifically says no rate increase until the next cycle, unless there's a special rate increase, in which case they have to qualify into that. And from what I saw, they don't qualify into the special rate increase. So it feels like we're not under any obligation to offer or hear a request for rate increase until next November. Am I wrong?
That's not the way that I've interpreted that, but I definitely don't want to say you're incorrect. The franchise section seven point three
Seems to
point
imply we
one.
can, but it doesn't say we have to.
You know, yeah, I mean, it's probably a good legal question that we can, Emily's on, but we can come back to you with one consideration on that. And maybe what we do let Waste Connections answer these questions too, is that by not doing a rate increase now, I mean, push that next rate increase even higher, you know, so again, back to like, how do you implement $1.21? Well, if you don't do it now, CPI, everything else is gonna go up, so the next rate increase may be $3.
We do have a 5% cap on that regular rate increase,
Right.
so
Yeah.
they would still, I mean, if you miss it, it could be capped at 5%.
Then the next one will be 5%, you know. it'll-
And the last one was much more than that if you take the two of them together.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, what was the last two together? What was that?
Much
25%?
larger, yeah, Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a recycling market, yes.
So where are
And
we,
that fell under the special rate increase.
so where are we at? Do we want to get a
adjustment.
legal opinion before moving forward, or what are we asking for, Don?
I really want, I don't know that I care, since we're not doing the decision until next week. But
Okay.
at this point,
Okay.
I think we should find out whether we even have to offer that hearing. And I guess the only legal opinion right now is, by having this discussion, are we offering that?
And that's kind of why I stopped
In
and
which
wanted
case,
to
maybe
ask
we
you
should
that.
find out first.
So I guess, are we putting ourselves into anything by even proceeding at this point?
And that might be a good question for Emily. You know, this is really just a work session that happens to be falling during a regularly scheduled council meeting. There's no decision that's being asked tonight.
So we're not
just
in a hearing or
conversation.
anything. This
No,
is,
you can ask
this is more of an
questions. Yeah,
educational process.
Yeah,
So
Jason and Joe are here.
I see Emily nodding.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Can we move forward with our folks from Waste Connections? All right. That's great. All right. Jason and Joseph, you're up. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing us tonight. Just to clarify a couple points, the special rate increase, while we weren't here at the time, I talked to Annie and Ray, and it had to do with the recycling markets when China quit buying recycling from the US. It had a significant impact. You know, we're used to get paid for recycling materials. Now haulers are getting charged to get rid of recycling. So that's what the special one was. And that was, you saw that throughout, you know, everywhere on the West Coast, and pretty much the whole US saw that market shift. So that's what the special one was. And then the annual CPI, you know, again, as Tyler said, it happened right as we were transitioning in. It says to have your application in by September 1st. The way I read the contract is if we don't get our application in or request in by then, we're not entitled to go back and get anything. So while it would have been effective January 1st and January, we're going to miss out on January and February, and we can't go back and get that, which, you know, that's on us. But again, we'd like you to consider this request to put the annual CPI in effective March 1st. And as you guys seen, we're seeing significant cost impacts. Our fuel was up, you know, for example, up 63% over a year ago. Our disposal fee that we pay to get rid of the solid waste, that's up over 12%. We're seeing wages, you know, in that 7 to 8% increase. So again, they're respectfully request that you consider next week to approve our annual CPI adjustment.
Yeah, to kind of just reinforce what Jason said about that application on September 1st, in section 7.4 of the contract, the kind of the last paragraph there, it gives the instructions if we don't submit by September 1st, we can still get the rate increase. It's just that the timing will be the first what's it say? No retroactive adjustment will be made, but it will be effective the first month of the next billing cycle following approval by council.
Are there questions for Jason and Joseph before we go to hearing next week?
In 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Kathleen. I'm curious about, I was kind of reading the Oregonian about the Ridwell Recycling company, and I liked what they offered because they offered, the clamshells, all my Dutch Bro glasses and all the things that, kind of end up getting put in the trash because they can't be recycled. And I'm just wondering what, I guess they were operating in unincorporated Clackamas County and got told to stop. And I'm curious, I did kind of reach out to them just as a citizen about whether or not they could even be in Sandy. But I'm just wondering what the option is in the future for having a corollary recycling service to pick up stuff that you all don't take, and whether you would be open to that or not.
I think that boils down to us if there's a good stable market for it. So when there is a good stable market, for clamshells, one thing with a commingled recycling cart like that, it's easy for us to add recycling to the mix. So I know that's what, Clackamas County is currently working with, Clackamas County haulers and the MRFs that sort the material to, hey, what material, just to make sure that everything that we collect is actually being recycled, to make sure there's a stable market for it. So if and when there's a stable market and the processor can handle it, we're willing to, add that stuff into the collection cart.
Nancy, the other half of the question though about, assuming you're not able to find a stable market for it, these folks have already found a market and are collecting that stuff in Portland and other places. And would you object to Sandy contracting with them to pick up the stuff that you don't pick up?
Yeah, so it's kind of a boutique service. They charge a premium for it. I think we would like to sit down, and if that's something you guys are interested in, sit down and discuss the option to provide that service, similar service that's separate, that would be an additional, charge outside of the, what we collect in the cart. But I think my initial reaction was we'd like an opportunity to sit down and discuss that with you first.
I wanted to just make a comment relative to the education part of the franchise agreement. If we were to hear this and approve this, would want to see a good portion or an explanation to the payers of why this rate increase would be out there, so that they understand, the factors that lead to it, as opposed to, it doesn't, the contract doesn't force that kind of education, but what it says is at a minimum, and it requires all those others. So I assume that this could be added to that quarterly newsletter that you're obligated to provide.
And then I have a question. So is there some sort of different policy on winter inclement weather and service that has occurred since our last operator to this one, to Waste Connections? Because I got to tell you, we received all of our packages, and we saw a lot of different vehicles coming and going. But we certainly weren't seeing our waste disposal trucks coming and picking up the trash for what felt like forever. Is there, how do you determine whether or not to not send drivers out? And has that policy shifted or changed in the last year? Because it seems like it has.
No, the same people that were making the decisions for the Cahoots are still making those decisions for us. So when we get the inclement weather like that, we have our local leadership team are out driving the roads, usually starting around midnight, and just determining, whether or not they feel it's safe for us to operate. We're the fifth most dangerous industry in the U.S. and we operate big trucks in residential neighborhoods. Often we have to get off to the side. We have to get out, push and pull in the snow, and it's a tough decision to make, and we just try to make the best decision that's for the safety of our employees and the communities that we serve.
And I can certainly respect that, and goodness knows kids are out more often when there's snow on the ground than at other times. I guess what I would like to communicate as mayor is I have heard an abnormal amount over from this last winter inclement weather from our members of our community and fellow counselors and others, and the lack of service. There seemed to be some momentum in the community, not just most people don't know there was an operator change, right? I mean, we try our best to get that out there, but most don't. And yet we heard a lot this last time that seems like service is a little different during inclement weather. So I get it. I hear you. Please be safe. Please don't put your employees and your drivers or our community members in scary and dangerous situations. But that is some feedback that I know I'm not alone in hearing from this
The
last year.
makeup service didn't happen.
What's
Right.
that?
I think everybody understood that they didn't.
Yeah,
show
the
up,
makeup
but the
service
makeup
didn't
service
happen as
didn't
well.
happen.
That's
Well, and
right.
just the response of, we'll get it next week, just set out more,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which has
Everything
never
got-
been done before
You know.
while I've been on council.
Everything got bumped a whole week rather than having kind of a couple days later options.
So then my question in addition to that is then, as ratepayers, were people still charged for that week of no service?
Yes. So we still pay our employees, we allow them to use, PTO for those dates or sick days. And then we still end up, working longer, making that up and paying the disposal on it. Trust me, we didn't come out ahead on the inclement weather.
Fair.
I appreciate the feedback though. And, at the same time, I don't like to make excuses, but at the same time, we have been struggling with keeping with the staffing, just with COVID and the quarantining and that cycling through. But we do have some really good features with our app and text notifications or call blasts where we can, do a better job or make sure we'll do a better job that, letting people know what the plan is. Usually if it's just one day, we can just push service back a day. So if it's, if we miss Monday, we can do Monday on Tuesday and then work the Saturday. But once it gets into 2 days, it's hard, there's just too much to make up. So that next week, we're going to have to pick up double.
So funny thing happened where, they were supposed to come pick up, the second week after Christmas, and they didn't pick up my stuff because I live where it's really windy and I'd put it in some extra round containers I had anyway. I called them up to kind of see that they could come back and get it after they were, said they were going to do it. And I kind of got a bit of a snippy answer. And so I said, well, I did mention something about the proposed rate increase coming to the city council. And the answer that I got from the woman on the line was, well, that's the city council's going to, or the city council's proposing and approving that or something like that. And I kind of had to disabuse her of that and tell her in no uncertain terms that, we weren't the ones seeking the rate increase. That was you all. And please don't be telling customers that the city council is the ones raising the rates. So I would hope that, I understand the reason for the rate increase and I, can support that. I just want to make sure that when you get any complaints from our Sandy residents, that you explain, just like you have to us, the need for the rate increases, the increase in gas prices and all those other things, and not put it on us, because we got enough folks mad at us for waste sewer rates and things like that. So this isn't something that we're really, doing other than just approving your rate request.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in. I know it's just got to be the greatest part of your job coming in front of city councils and with this information, right? So I really appreciate your willingness and your time and forthrightness in the back and forth. And I don't know if I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, but I look forward to seeing you here in 2 weeks. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Joe.
Mayor, before we go off this topic, I'm just curious. Assuming we do have to hear the request, is there any other discussion other than validating, than trying to dispute the numbers? I mean, that's the only other item on that the council would really be able to do.
Yeah, it's to dispute their numbers, or if they don't make the right case, It's also, I mean, things are expensive right now. We were just talking about grocery shopping, during the break.
But given that we have this franchise agreement, so for the most part, it seems like we're already obligated to approve this, correct?
Right.
So we have no ability to negotiate the increase or the timing of those increases. This is just,
Contract's pretty clear, other than for them missing the date. I think that's the only ambiguity.
is that right?
So then here's my next question in regards to the contract. How did we get here?
Wonderful question.
I like it when I ask good questions. I try.
So I don't have the original date of that franchise agreement, but it's old is the short answer I'll give you.
2014.
Is that
I
the
believe
date that you
so.
have? Okay. So several years old.
And then is there an end date to the contract? And I apologize because I haven't looked at I just tried logging into it. It won't let me in.
We have to give them like 10 years notice. It's, which
Which was
Why not?
adjusted a little bit, I feel like, with the new contract there.
Most franchises have language about rate setting that is basically the burden of proof, as long as it's supplied by the hauler and, their financials are shared and all that, then it's a high bar for a council to not grant it because they're a business, they got employees to pay, they got operating costs and things like that. So the annual rate increase was a popular item, I think, in the mid teens, whatever we call that decade, to get around this idea of like, especially during the recession, a lot of haulers kind of delayed rate increases and stuff despite fuel and stuff going up and everything. And then you have these massive rate increases coming and councils were like, oh, we want to go back to more of an annual, kind of like what we do with our own utilities, right? So annual kind of, indexing and things like that. We did make that tweak to the franchise recently, but it does have a noticing provision where it's basically put them on a clock for 9 years, that we're not going to renew. So, we can always try to, it could be a mutual, like, hey, we want to renegotiate some terms or something, but there's going to be some give and take about that.
Yeah, I mean, my gosh, I appreciate, the entire thing, right? I appreciate that a business has to make money. They have employees they have to pay, they have a service that they have to provide, and I get that. But sitting on council with wastewater rates, sewer rates, every other rate, police fees, utility fees, everything. It's where does it end, right? Where does it end? And then looking at inflation, cost of living increases, all of these things, and then looking at who we represent in this community. And I have to ask myself, I don't know how some people are putting food on the table, truly. And so to sit here and make decisions about continually increasing rates, I just like to have some good concrete information on how we got here. And I understand, fuel prices are going up, but fuel prices could go down next year. Yet we're still stuck with an increased rate for a current fuel price. So there's just some things that don't sit super well. I don't like feeling strong-armed, and I don't like being forced into a corner. So there's my.
So the
Set and a
downside,
half.
the downside of the agreement is that while the adjustment would go up or down, depending on, they don't have to request it down.
Right.
And if they don't request it down, it would not automatically go down. So it really just goes up.
Exactly. And that's kind of where I was going. Yeah.
In 2014, inflation was tiny.
Yeah.
It seemed like a good deal. But we could be heading to a period where it's 5% every year.
Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
But actually, it's 80% of 5. So it's 4%.
actually, I think inflation is like 7 something right now.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Anyway.
All right.
And I guess I have a question for Jordan. Do we have, so I understand what I heard about the, again, I don't know about y'all, but my, the clamshells, from the takeout and the Dutch brother iced tea glasses and all that stuff is a huge amount of stuff of what we throw away because we don't have that much trash. And none of that goes in the recycling. And so so what I heard is that they might be interested in looking at options, but if they don't have the ability to do that, I appreciate, let's have them do it if they can and want to. But if they can't or don't want to, do we have the ability to contract those services? And I get that they're kind of considered boutique services or whatever, but can we contract those services that they don't want to do or can't do to a different company?
I think the easy answer is, we can look into this. A lot of jurisdictions are currently dealing with this, and there's a lot of different pathways depending on how the council wants to go. I think starting with the hauler and working with legal on what our existing franchise says, how it's defined, the type of recyclable materials and things like that, and what we're obligated to offer to the franchise hauler first. And then, if the council has interest in Hoodview, doesn't want to collect this material, then there's options from there. Do you want to franchise these type of things, or you just have an open market for companies like Woodwell to come in and provide them? But there's legal questions, and then there's like kind of policy questions. We need to change anything in our codes and stuff like that to facilitate that. My understanding is they're not here yet, but probably only a matter of time as they expand out, especially as they get more customers. We can even have them come and do a presentation to council about what they do and what they offer. But out of respect, for our existing franchise, we should, engage with them on this too. So.
I have one more question, and I hate to drag this out, I know, but if we have no control over this, why are we even voting on this at some point? That's kind of one of my frustrations with setting up here is the amount of stuff we pigeonhole ourselves into to where we don't, supposedly we get a say, but we don't. Why is that?
I mean, I think the answer is that a lot of the work was done up front, right? In negotiating that original franchise that set out the terms, and the council at the time, negotiating that contract and committing to us to this contract that kind of does lay this out. I mean, the checks and balances are that they do have to submit, the information that, we review, and, there's other models too. Some cities use Clackamas County that manages the franchises for the entire incorporated area of Clackamas County, and some other cities too. And we can look at using their staff. They have a small team that manages, solid waste and recycling in the franchises there. So we can lean on them more to do these reviews and stuff, and kind of see if that helps, just in terms of our capacity, but also familiarity with, rate setting and that sort of thing. But that's kind of a long answer to your question though. I mean, in some cases we're bound by these contracts that were set, almost a decade ago. And we vet it and make sure that, their numbers are, true and audited, and reflect the current conditions like fuel prices and CPI and things like that for the terms. But, if those all comply, then,
Is the question maybe why isn't it just administrative?
Yep, that's the question.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That was a long answer.
Same answer. It's in the contract. Council by resolution approves.
Because I think what you're saying is just not this, it's other things.
Yeah,
too.
it's a lot of things, but this is frustrating because if we have no say in this, I don't even know why this is coming here. Like, this is quite honestly, it's a waste of their time. It's a waste of our time.
Got to ask questions about snow removal, got to ask questions about recyclable. I mean, it compels the franchisee to come and speak with, they're an important service for our city. And
Oh,
we
totally.
don't provide it
No,
with
no,
staff
not trying to
that
discount
contract to do that.
Yep, they are. So very last question, of course, famous last words. This type of franchise contract, typical to see in a community like this, or atypical?
I think it's typical.
I would say from my limited experience, typical.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Hoodview ones especially are similar to this. Now we've talked about the history here. At one point it was a different company. There was a RFP that went out probably a couple, almost 2 decades ago. I
Yep.
think.
20 years ago.
Yeah, city with waste management and stuff, and committed to. Yeah. Okay.
And to Captain's point earlier, it is almost exclusive. It's not like you could get somebody else to
Right.
come in and
Yeah.
do part of what they
Yeah.
do.
That's a market thing though, because I'm aware that there probably aren't very many other companies that would come in here underbid and all that kind of stuff. So,
You don't want multiple haulers either. every
No.
day. Like Portland has an open commercial market, so you get a, garbage truck every day because they're going to different businesses and everything. And that's bad for our streets,
Yeah.
it's bad for noise and all
We
that.
should set up a franchise agreement for Amazon, so we could just limit those.
Yeah.
They already have one. Not-
No, I mean, just
Yeah.
one delivery guy to my neighborhood per day.
Mhm. All right.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
council.
Yep. All right, moving forward in the agenda, resolution 2021-36, SandyNet construction RFP for an alternative procurement method. Greg, I see you on there. Hello, sir.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
All right, I am bringing before you tonight a resolution 2021-36, which is to review and adopt findings to support a design build delivery method for an upcoming RFP. And if council remembers, back in November, council committed ARPA funds to the expansion of SandyNet fiber to the remaining underserved areas within city limits. Additionally, since then, staff has recognized that there is an opportunity to expand fiber down to the wastewater treatment plant, sewer treatment plant, the one that's located at the end of Jarl Road. And that the expansion of the fiber to that plant was identified that it would help operations staff manage and basically operate that plant. The portion of that part of the fund that would go towards the sewer treatment plant would be funded by the wastewater fund. And the remainder for the SandyNet fiber expansion would be funded by the ARPA funds committed by council. So after review of materials, pricing, availability of crew, current staff workload, we determined that it would be more beneficial to deviate from the standard bid procedure and instead go out for a design build delivery method, which would allow us to consolidate both of these projects into a single RFP, where we would solicit a designer that would be capable of designing the project as well as actually managing the construction of the project. And using this approach, we hope to gain economies of scale through that single design and construction crew by procuring the same type of materials, using the same standards, same kind of layout, design specifications, all the way down to the bill of materials and all products that would be used, including the same labor. So it would be basically two projects combined into one bigger project that's funded by those two sources. In addition, this type of combination of the two projects would satisfy the criteria for value engineering, which is encouraged by the state of Oregon and the Fed. The state of Oregon does require that we meet 8 categories before we can deviate from the standard procurement process. Those are operational budget, financial data, public benefit, value engineering, specialized expertise that's required, public safety, marketing conditions, technical complexity, and funding sources. The attached resolution details those further, and there is also an attachment of findings that goes into greater detail on each one of those 8 topics. So the recommendation tonight is staff respectfully recommends that council review and adopt resolution 2021-36, that there would also be budgetary impact, not from the adoption of the resolution, but that the ARPA funds committed to SandyNet and the fiber expansion would be $449,000, and that the anticipated cost of the wastewater treatment plant expansion down Jarl Road would be estimated between $300,000 to $400,000. These costs aren't known fully until the RFP has gone out and someone has been awarded with the design and a bill of materials. At this time, I'll take any questions.
Questions? Kathleen?
So Greg, I appreciate you pointing out, because I was confused. I kind of had to send an email in about the fact that we weren't using the ARPA funds for the wastewater part of this project. But what I get a little confused whenever we talk SandyNet. But my understanding was that when we're just looking at the ARPA part of this, that this was something that normally, like you all have done for many of the other developments and neighborhoods and stuff that have been developed, that you go out there and figure out a design to how to hook up these apartments and underserved areas and all, and then, work with yourselves or contractors, you have equipment and you buy the equipment and all that. Anyways, my point is that y'all do the work and you kind of do the design and you do the work. And so a lot of the money that we were going to be getting from using the ARPA funds would have kind of come back to SandyNet to help pay for your department. And now we're looking at kind of contracting it all out, which I get the technical complexity when it comes to the wastewater treatment plant. I don't know if there's extra technicalities on the rest of this, but my question and concern is that, with so many of these other kind of contracts that we've, gone through RFPs or whatever, we start off with a price that's, one thing, and then lo and behold, within months or weeks or whatever, it's, half again as much, twice as much, all that. And so, once you kind of try to contract it all out, you have a lot less control over what's going on and how much it costs and all that. So I guess my question is, I'm a little bit, I understand the wastewater treatment plant, maybe contracting that out, but I'm a little concerned about the loss of income to SandyNet for doing it themselves. And then second of all, the lack of control we have for what it will ultimately cost, and that maybe we could have done it cheaper, better, faster, or at least had more control over it, or when we didn't, when it was coming in higher, we knew where we could kind of cut corners or massage it to make it stay within the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. And the two pieces I would say to that is typically for brand new construction, which is what this the ARPA money would be used for, is going up to locations where we currently have maybe mainline that passes past that area, but doesn't actually go up to the individual sites or locations. It would be typically newer developments when they are built. A lot of the pipe and construction is put on the developer to put in, whereas in this case, this is completely on us, which is burden to our crew in addition to all of the other developments currently going in at this time here. So while we do have the capability to do it, given the current number of developments coming down the pipeline that our crew will be designing and building out, those ones inside city, limits the usage for the apartments before the end of the timeline. I'm hesitant to say that our crew could do it all of ourselves. We originally did anticipate, when we went through and designed some of this and selected some of these locations, selecting ones that we could, but we ultimately came to the conclusion that given the time constraints and then us not being able to get a better value for equipment and services, a lot of this would have to be contracted out to do a lot of the drilling, in addition to all of the coordination to each of the individual apartments, trailer parks, businesses, everything else that would be built out for the ARPA project. So we did consider that. In terms of the revenue, the goal is to use it to not go, there would be, it's funded for, so we wouldn't exceed the cost that was allocated to us. So the 449,000 would be used for the SandyNet expansion, and that would determine how much expansion we could possibly do within the time frame, and then how much is allowed given the cost of everything. Prices of equipment have gone up since we funds were allocated to SandyNet for ARPA in addition. So those are taken into consideration that that might be changing the scope based on how much we have available at that given point in time. So when we looked at it, we saw this as a win, because we can have someone come in, contract it, build it out, and the revenue that's generated from it doesn't go to paying off new debt service. It would be going to paying off the existing debt service. which is we saw as focusing in hitting our main council goal.
Additional questions, comments?
I have a question. Thanks, Greg, for putting this together. I'm gonna take this off because I feel like I'm muffled. Regarding the waste treatment plant, that was actually one of the suggestions I'd had. It was, let's consider running SandyNet down there. I am surprised by $400,000. Seems a lot. If we look at the 10-year life cycle, that's $40,000 a year we're paying for SandyNet just to get it there. Just to go 20 years, it's 20,000. I mean, that's a lot of money for a year. So I think at this point, unless the analysis has already been done, I am recommending we pause on that until Jenny and team can maybe do an alternatives analysis. At $400,000, are we better off having one of the cable providers come in? I mean, granted, it's a long run from wherever we're currently stationed. If there were enough houses along there that we're picking up other business and offsetting it, then maybe it's a good investment. But I just want to make sure that there isn't a cheaper provider. And I also want to make sure that what we're doing isn't a single point of failure to where if a line gets cut, we are suddenly out of compliance with our control system. So I think that's going to require a lot of additional analysis before we commit 400,000 to that effort. That's my thought.
Greg, did you want to address any of that? Or Lauren, go ahead.
Sure. And Greg, jump in if you have ideas too, but by structuring a design build, the design comes first. And I think having a contractor on board that designs these systems that we can do the analysis as part of this project. And maybe there's a gate that if it is 400,000, which we hope it isn't, but if it is, that extreme that we don't build if it doesn't pencil out. There's a couple different routes we want to explore too, going down our existing sewer easement versus going in passing homes and businesses that we can connect and make some revenue off of. And I think that's why there's this range of costs. And there's also, Greg's team, the contracting questions, there's just not capacity to do it. That's, we got the money, but we just not the manpower and the labor to do this. But Greg's team can do some of the work and connections, and we have some of this equipment. So there's that number is just a kind of a really high level estimate. We're not sure what the total cost is. We just know there is a distance. If you go one route, it's up and around and down, and you got to get easements, you got to bury some of it's aerial.
Don't want us to commit to SandyNet for the wastewater treatment plant unless it's the best solution.
Okay.
So is there so I know if we were to build a road, we could do a reimbursing district based off of future development and stuff of it. Is there anything like that that could be utilized for just to the point of, and I'm not even sure of the geography on this, but is there like a reimbursement type district deal that could help pay for this in the long run through future development and other people utilizing the infrastructure?
I believe so. Like other public infrastructure, you can set up districts like that. I think one way we try to capture that with SandyNet is installation fees, which is very low. I think for most cities, it's $100 or something like that. But you can, create a district that would have a higher installation fee or something to offset some of those costs. It's a lot cheaper than what it would cost.
It's just not like it is. It's just not like it is with roads and building.
Right.
Yeah, it's a rural area. It's not gonna have building on it.
Not a lot of.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, Don. And correct me, Mike's not here, but Greg would know, and Jenny will learn this, is the only thing they can get down there, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, is DSL.
Yeah.
Copper and towel.
Yeah.
And there isn't any, my understanding for like the cable, whatever.
But we haven't thrown $400,000 at anybody to see what else they can come up
Right,
with, right? That's all.
Yeah, so I was just saying that in the why there's this not there. I think the design of figuring out what the price would be one step forward on that piece of it. But right now, when you said there's only one way in and something, the failure, my understanding over the last.
We're in that
how many
mode
years?
now. And it's a problem.
We're in that now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
for
and that's
sure.
the problem with it right now is it calls out. So it would be no different than we are now.
So I want to make sure that I am 100% in favor of having real-time, robust internet connectivity, because that's the only way those operators are going to be able to be remote, checking on things, and that will ever
Right.
hit our
And
compliance
cameras and
numbers.
having upload speeds and.
Right, so we have to have that. I just want to make sure we're getting it the best, most
And
economical way.
New tech, remember, I'm not the tech, that's, I look at you, Jerry, but new technology like Starlink and satellite internet and also, it's not gonna, I mean, we're talking about a $400,000, $40,000
Right.
investment. Like that technology isn't gonna get where it needs to be for what we're talking about.
Starlink works well in a big field because
Okay.
it needs to hit a
It's-
satellite in an
it's
angle.
really in a
You're not
hole.
gonna be able to hit it, but
Okay.
in that type of realm in it. So I think, your idea, let's find out what it's gonna cost before we, commit to building the one to the sewer treatment plant. As far as the questions before about, whether SandyNet does the work or not, you heard they're extremely busy, but it's no different than what we did when we built the entire system the first time. We had a design build it, and then over the years, Joe would bring in, and then Greg too, a design build on some of those when they got so busy, they couldn't keep up with the demand of it. And as you know, if our building out our infrastructure, we have a huge demand right now with just new construction and homes, and not like they're sitting around twiddling their thumbs by any means. So and that would be, the reason behind that. Again, no different than what we've done many times over in the past for knocking down a lot of the construction that couldn't keep up with the existing, because you can't just go out and hire more workforce for only a few months of work or whatever, 6 months of work. And then right now you can't get workers to apply for jobs. So anyway.
Well, in terms of that, I feel like there's a crucial timing to get our internet down to the treatment plant. That's really important to do that as quickly as feasible and reasonable. The question I have here is, this appeared to be a commitment of the $450,000, whether it costs that much or less or more. And to me, I'd like to see a design that's looked at some of those alternatives. I don't want to spend a couple of years at it, but I do think because of the pressure we have from the different agencies that are looking at us, we need to be able to find a way to make this thing happen. Part of the problem that we've got here at this point is because we don't have this automated system that we can look and watch the meters and the gauges and the pumps and all that kind of stuff, and we get into trouble that way. That's what puts some of our problem in our faces. So we need to get this thing done quickly, but I agree with Don. I think we need to find out maybe some alternatives. $450,000 is a bit of a change. And maybe there's another way to do that that might make us cheaper.
Well, what we're deciding tonight is just to do this combined design build thing, right?
Right. This is a
Just to get the
committee to
design.
do funds. This
Oh, is
is,
that all?
Yeah, that's all we're,
Yeah.
I mean, it'll come back later. I mean.
Yeah.
So we want to proceed with the design.
The one question I have,
Okay.
in addition to that, is that if we're doing kind of like, again, going out with these underserved areas, I forget how many units we were proposing with the ARPA money. Can you,
There's like,
Yeah, I believe if we are getting the areas that we want to, we'll have around 400 to 500, depending on exactly how many complexes we pass in units.
yeah, that's kind of what I recall when we were talking about, where to put the ARPA money. And so my question is, I guess my concern is that, if we go out with this design thing and then, instead of 400, they're, only going to be able to do 100 with, the $300,000 to $400,000 in ARPA. I guess we'll have an opportunity to have a go back, but that's my concern again, is once we start contracting out, it seems like the prices go way up and we have a lot less control over what it costs. So, but I understand also you guys are busy, and I mean, to some extent you could be contracting out the new stuff that's more straightforward. I get that this is more complex, but I can support the resolution. I just want to make sure that we can meet the intent of our allocation for the ARPA funds and really get those underserved areas wired up.
Anyone else? Because I'll make the motion before you guys ready.
I move to adopt, make a motion to adopt resolution 2021-36.
So motion by Counselor Smallwood, a second by Counselor Sheldon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries. All right, Jordan, thank you, Greg, appreciate it. Great job.
Thank you, council.
Thanks, Council. A fun question first. All my report items are fun, right? So it's actually this, believe it or not, it's that time of the year that we have to start thinking about our 4th of July show. And the question this year is a couple different questions, but as you know, we usually do it on 4th of July. It's what it's called, our 4th of July show. But this last year we did it was at the end of October with the last Sandy football game. It was very successful. I think we lucked out with weather. And so something that we are kind of under this decision point with the fireworks show people. They have to, schedule their events and things like that. But a couple different options that, kind of come to mind. Do we want to go back to a 4th of July presentation? Do we want to change that presentation to maybe a light show or something? Do we want to stay with an off show, like, in the fall or Veterans Day or something? Do both? So kind of just throwing that out there as different ideas to kind of get your take on if we want to just try again for the 4th of July, like we've done in the past. And
For myself, yeah, I would like to go back to the 4th of July. One, because it's the 4th of July. It's a celebration of the independence of the United States. And but also because we'll be going back to the Mountain Festival. And so those two things together, yeah, that's a lot of woohoo, for the city of Sandy. So yeah, I would like to move that back to the 4th of July.
And I mean, that's where I'm at too. For no other reason, many communities our size would ordinarily do a lot for 4th of July week or just festivities. But because we have the Mountain Festival, that's always, the adjacent weekend, we don't. But we do have a fireworks display, that allows everybody to kind of come out and do the deal. And then, we move on with our Mountain Festival activities into the next week. So for me, I've always traditionally liked that. I'd like to go back to that. That's just my part.
I don't disagree in that respect, but I do know there are a number of communities that fire off fireworks on 4th of July. I mean, it's not like it's would be the only one. And again, I'm a 4th of July fan. I enjoy sitting on the grass. Have done that many years, except for the last couple of years till this last year. I enjoy sitting on the grass, watching with my family and watching the sparks. But it might be, especially in looking retrospectively at the football game, that was really a lot of fun. A lot of people really appreciated that. It kind of fit with a community project that was really something worth combining. And I thought that really worked out well. I'd like to maybe think about that. Is there an opportunity to maybe split up, do a 4th of July and another project around Veterans Day or some of those kind of things? And if you think about, I'm the last person to advocate global warming and drying and all that kind of stuff, but 4th of July does get us close to a lot of the fire issues that are around. And there may be some more times when 4th of July might be a tough one to put out a bunch of fireworks because of the fire dangers. And
Yeah,
maybe a wintertime project.
They're pretty safe. Let me ask you this. Would the fireworks in October been as much fun if it'd been pouring down rain?
Probably not.
Because that's normally the weather that we get.
I'm not discounting that. It's just that it worked out so well. And
It did. We got lucky.
Weather was
We got lucky.
fine and everybody enjoyed it. And it was attached to our football team and everything else. And it just seemed to be really a nice detachment for that. So
And one thing though, I would come back with the dry weather and stuff because this was kind of my opinion when we went through the little deal we went through this last summer, which is I remember when we had to cancel when Governor Brown canceled our fireworks display the summer before. Those were some incredible personal firework displays going on in our community. And I just say that to say is I think it's a far safer experience for people to be coming out and watching our fire department put on a professional display, than some of the individual activities that tend to happen in the vacuum of not having that alternative.
I get your logic, but in my time in Sandy, There's some pretty substantial fireworks going on.
That just
Even when I
happen
was-
full stop every year anyways.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
People go across the border, grab all those flying illegal fireworks, and we end up with a lot that way. So there may be another solution there. I don't know what that might be. When I managed Timothy Lake, had fun that we had like the third largest fireworks display in the state sometimes, because there was so much going on out in the national forest. It seems to me that there might be a better way to handle that. And I don't know how to not put that into perspective of maybe a wintertime rainstorm.
Yeah.
It makes me pause.
I would like it to go back to the 4th of July.
All right.
And I think that there's an opportunity to bring it back, maybe not late October, have an additional one, but maybe someone decides, maybe the bank would want to join in and sponsor that. But I think there could be some other sponsors, especially around a football game, homecoming. Veterans Day is a little farther, getting colder and wetter. So maybe like in September or early October, whatever that might look like. I think there might be some economic, David's gone already, development type things that might encourage people wanting to sponsor around maybe that could also be an additional trend, tradition in our community in the future too. Because you do get them a lot less cheaper. I know where my wife was from, Toledo, Oregon. They never had them on the 4th. They always had them a month later or a few weeks later because they got, a bigger bang for their buck. And it was amazing. And pun intended. But I think that even though a lot of communities have them on the 4th of July, it's our community, and this is where our community comes. I don't want to go to someone else's community. So I can appreciate that. Anyway, that's my opinion.
All right. We're not gonna take it.
No, that's great. Clackamas County Bank is the sponsor, and it's, so we'll speak with Kathy and the bank and what they're comfortable with too is important to us.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of trying to see if we can get more sponsorships because, having a couple is better than one. Too.
Absolutely.
And it's been what, about $10,000 for
It's
the-
10,000. Yeah,
you
it's
know,
going up a little bit.
seems-
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure inflation, it's
Yeah.
gonna go up, but a few other, people might want to chip in.
It's the disposing of the fireworks that's going on.
You do get a better
It's the garbage
show.
of it.
You do get a better show off season because the 4th of July is a popular night. So
Right,
the
yeah.
contractor all sends their A team to the big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. Have another
Yeah,
one.
but this
as
last one was
homecoming.
almost a little too professional. It didn't feel like Sandy to me.
Or any thought to moving it to the mountain festival weekend? Just put it off a week.
I like, yeah, I
There's a lot going on.
4th of
It's
July.
traditional 4th of July. It really is.
It's
I
American.
don't want to argue against tradition like that. Just see
Definitely that.
things went really great.
What's that? I said definitely that.
All right.
Okay, a couple more
Focus
things.
on the 4th. All right.
The wastewater oversight committee met last week and our consultant working on the NPDS permitting and groundwater options reported out on some recent findings. They've been evaluating different options for discharging the reclaimed water into groundwater. And so they reported on the desktop study that they did for subsurface infiltration. And it, the good news is it appears that the infiltration with kind of within the bad news is within the UGB, this is UPG, there's not a lot of land or opportunities there. The good news is that there is some potential that the soils would be conducive to this outside of the UGB, namely more in the Roslyn Lake area, which we've kind of grown familiar with over the course of this project. So there's a few more studies that still need to be done as part of that. It actually falls within the existing contract and the contract scope and fee. So no additional fee is part of that. The oversight committee, asked a lot of questions about it. Counselors on the committee and the recommendation was to proceed with some additional studies to look at the subsurface infiltration. The other types of infiltration don't appear to be cost feasible or technically feasible, especially within the UGB. So we're sort of
Can you
narrowing.
clarify what those are?
We learned a new word, counselors, Bedos zone.
Those, right.
Bedos. Thank you.
Ask our engineer.
Ask our engineer.
Right.
Sounds like an item.
And I think, we would eventually come back to with the reports to the council about what those options are and what was looked at, and what was kind of taken off the table. But the subsurface infiltration is kind of in the first layer, what they say, 4 or 5 feet deep, and then it infiltrates down into the ground. It's more of like a drain field, and it needs probably about 50 to 60 acres to do it appropriately. A lot of still unanswered
Can I
questions.
clarify? It's like a huge commercial sized septic system.
Yeah.
So that's when they said groundwater infiltration, they're talking about a septic system size 50 acres could potentially dispose of all of our new treatment plants water.
A lot of questions still be answered though.
And make a nice
Costs.
and make a nice soccer field.
I was gonna say golf
Yeah, I
course,
mean-
soccer.
Yeah.
That's, I guess that's the piece that I want to make sure people understand is there's a lot of questions still unanswered yet. There's a lot of testing to be done. There's a lot of investigations that need to be done. There's a lot of questions up there that we had that were not able to be answered because parametrics just hadn't gotten that point. So there will be a lot of information as we come along. But at this point, I was happy that some of the questions we were asking were not eliminating a lot of the things that could be done to get some of this fluent, this treated water to be put in a place where it will be the least impactful environmentally. But again, there's a lot of questions that we're still waiting for the answers for.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm just confused because I thought, those consultants were all working on, dumping at Revenue Bridge. We had that plan in Roslyn Lake and we all went on the field trip. And now what I'm hearing is we have something totally different and I'm not saying that's bad or wrong or anything else. I don't want to get interrupted. But what I'm saying is that are they evaluating all these additional options under the existing costs, or are we paying a lot more for them to look at all these options? And not that that's a bad thing. I just want to kind of know that we're spending more money to look at these options. And, and just know that we're all in agreement that we're going to look at a bunch of different options. Because I kind of feel like, it's like the pool thing. It's like, okay, we kind of had that opposite thing and we're all kind of going along. And all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, we don't want to do that. We want to do something different. We're not sure what it is, but, and I just feel like a little deja vu going on. But I think some really good questions are being asked and some options are being assessed that maybe weren't looked at before. That's a good thing. I'm just concerned that I want to be aware of it. I think we all need to be aware of it. We need to kind of know, if there's additional cost to those studies, we need to kind of be involved in that. So that's.
So the council had agreed that exploring groundwater was one of the adds to the contract, but all within the existing contract authorization. It was like a $900,000 contract, and some of these scope items were additional items that we could add if needed, and that's what we checked with the council on. Proceed with some groundwater
Yeah,
studies.
those were more like DEQ. If DEQ came back and wanted us to look at
There's some of that
different
too. Yeah, absolutely.
questions,
Yeah.
that's kind of where we approved the money. Because I watched that meeting to see, yeah. And that was kind of, it wasn't kind of, yeah, I feel like we are kind of getting outside the scope of what we originally were proposing. And again, not a bad thing. I just want to kind of make sure that we're, if we're going down a new direction, that we're all kind of understanding.
Yeah, and we certainly haven't reached that point. We're just giving you an update on what studies have been done within, that scope. It's gated so that we won't proceed and give them money for things that we don't need. It's basically, do we want to proceed? This is what we found so far. Okay, let's do the next study. Okay, I want to say the most viable alternative is still Sandy River via Revenue Bridge. That's still the most viable. We're still exploring these other opportunities, and we're going to, still, check at these gates is if we're pursuing for either temperature mitigation or a discharge alternative. But Parametrics, bulk of their contract is working with DEQ on the MPDS permitting at the same time. So,
Thank you.
good questions. Also, wastewater related on the oversight committee, we authorized the early work agreement amendment number 6, which will be a part of the GMP 3 coming to council, I believe, at the next meeting, or actually March 6th. GMP 3 has a lot of important work in it that a lot of the items have to be purchased in advance. We're seeing months and months of delays on getting, all sorts of different supplies. In this case, it's submersible pumps, I think the UV system, and then the control panels that we're ordering that are coming, 8 months from now, but you have to put in these orders in a long lead time. And then there will be another early work package for similar items, like the filters that will be coming up shortly. to be authorized too. So we're trying to get ahead of the supply chain issues by ordering as many things as possible. So 7 early work packages in total for this treatment plant project is a lot. And then just some reminders, the upcoming meetings, it's another Tuesday meeting coming up, February 22nd. Will be following the holiday. I think we do have a pretty packed agenda that night. And then following that, we have the March 5th retreat. That's a Saturday. I think that we're all looking forward to too. And I don't know if this has been.
We should say where we're doing.
Yeah, I don't know if this has been shared yet, but we're planning on doing it actually at the library community room. I don't think we've had a meeting there as
No, it's a
the
great
council
spot.
yet. So
Not this council.
yeah.
Yeah.
So looking forward to going over there.
Sit.
Yep.
All right, great report. Thank you, Jordan. Don.
Thanks. The wastewater thing has been very interesting. Obviously, I pushed hard for the alternatives view and that we look at it. But that said, I wasn't necessarily hopeful that we would even come up with an option. So for me, the idea that there is a remote possibility that if all the stars aligned and all the costs aligned and everything else, that you wouldn't have to discharge into Sandy is very exciting to me personally. I did want to elaborate too. So that's the shallow area, and really Roslyn, there's only a couple land plots that could even work on. But to Jeremy, your point, could make a nice golf course, could make soccer fields. It's, the grass grows green over a septic field. That's what this is. The other, the deeper insertion is basically, it's not drilling way into the groundwater level. It's staying at a level above the groundwater and letting it disperse laterally. So it's deeper, it costs more, but potentially it could be done inside the city limits. That's something they haven't looked or ruled out yet. So that also creates another option that we just don't know whether that's even viable yet or not. But it's interesting because it's a way of disposing of the wastewater in a way that doesn't actually get into the regular aquifers where drinking water comes from. The difficulty in permitting those kind of things varies dramatically, but because of the quality of our MBR plant, it might not be nearly as onerous as it might be, 20 years ago with earlier technologies. And in some cases, all these options create trade-offs and potentially competition even between the same groups who don't want one option, may not want the other. So there's no perfect solution yet that will be found, but I like that they're looking. I really appreciate them digging into that. The pool task force reports getting all finalized, and we've been talking with Jeff about having that one of the discussion topics in the work session or the goals when we get up there, so that we can kind of map out where do we want to put our time, effort, money, and so forth the next year or so on that. And then I just want to say thanks for the staff for following up on those tents and these other structures. I think it's very cool that a little follow-up produces some big results, and maybe that's a lesson for all of us to just ask, follow up, and do. And were you going to talk about signage?
Oh, sorry.
That was my last item. I'll let it.
Councilor Wilkinson had a great inquiry this week about the sign at Suburban as a City of Sandy. It says City of Sandy below the Suburban. It's a reader board. We've digged up a lot of history on that, and turns out that
It's our sign.
Yeah, we have some ability to put our events on there per an agreement from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think it was more
Jeremy knows.
institutional knowledge loss.
Yeah.
that happened. I know.
No one asked.
Exactly. So all it takes is someone asking.
Well, we limited it to that, and the fire district are the only ones with reader signs.
Right.
Reader signs are against policy in the whole city, except for
Walgreens
those.
has one, but they got it.
But they got theirs, and they can't change within so many seconds of each other. But anyway.
Just one of those things I think just got lost with time and people like Nancy leaving and stuff. And,
But
and
let's
then
be
2
cool.
years of no events.
Let's be cool about it. Not every city council meeting needs to be on the reader board, right? But I mean,
No.
but good
The
events.
big
and
events,
Yeah,
but the
we should
kind
be
of,
doing.
like, the kind of things that would be in the
Yes.
community
Totally.
thing, so we're trying to
Car
push
shows
forward.
and
Fireworks. Yeah.
these type of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and just classes and rec opportunities. I mean,
Yeah.
basic stuff.
Yeah.
Get it out there.
So let Rochelle know. We'll
Good
get
job.
back at that. So.
That's
thank you
great.
to Counselor Opitz for pointing that out.
Yeah, we all learned some. Carl.
You know, for the first time, I think in a long time, I don't have anything to report.
All right.
What day is it?
Great.
Sorry.
I'm not ready. I'm.
The 7th?
That's right. I know you have preparation. Hurry up, Kathleen, move on.
Okay.
We have fun at our council meeting.
We try.
So we had the library advisory board meeting last week and things like, we've kind of gone over the plans that they have an accomplishment report they sent into the Clackamas County. And we went over that. But more interestingly, we were looking at different ways and opportunities to kind of market the library, especially COVID obviously hit them all hard. They're doing things like they were doing take and make, and now they're doing make and take things with kids and all. They're doing the library programs with the reading groups and stuff with the kids and the teens. But the most exciting thing I kind of thought, and I thought we were talking about getting something like that on these reader boards in town with the community center or whatever. But did you know that we have a loaning library, and you can like check out a pressure washer and an air fryer? And I had no idea all the things that we have that we can be loaning out. And I'm sure the public doesn't know either. And so it's just an amazing, it's just, I think there's so many things about the library that people don't know that are out there for opportunities. And so we really do need to kind of figure out, we're talking about Instagram and Facebook and a bunch of other
Put it in the
places.
utility bill.
And
Put it in the
utility, yeah.
bill.
Yeah, although a lot of people pay them online and never see that.
It's true.
So,
It goes to everybody at
hopefully
least.
we can kind of figure out a way to do that. But anyway, let's see. The other thing was Rochelle's working on the technical advisory committee for the community center, parks and trails stuff. And I'm excited about that and being involved in that. And then I'm thrilled to see Jenny here because it is kind of nice to see my husband finally retiring and just a lot of the stress and all that of all the things going on. So I really welcome her to our town and Rochelle too. I think having this kind of new folks to come in and with all the energy, I know it's a fire hose situation for them because there's so much to catch up on, but a steep learning curve, but I really appreciate their enthusiasm and their energy and look forward to working with them. So thank you.
Rich. I'm gonna take the Carl pass.
All right.
We haven't met him.
All
like a
right.
month.
Go.
Wow,
This is
it's
great.
crazy. Well, I don't have a whole lot.
Yeah.
Works meeting last month was pretty much just kind of going through kind of the rules and regs. They've got a fairly new board, so just kind of getting everybody's feet wet so they kind of understand the role of the Parks Advisory Board. This Wednesday is the next meeting, and they'll be kind of doing some goal setting. And they've also expressed some interest in maybe shooting a few things toward us for our goal setting as well. So look for that as it comes, as it gets closer. And then Jordan, I just want to congratulate you on a great staff you've got. You should be excited about
Yes.
some of the new people and then just your staff overall. So
Well, thank you.
super
For all of
exciting.
us.
It's
Yeah.
exciting for Sandy.
Sandy's an attractive place.
I'm
Yeah.
excited. So
Great.
right on.
Jeremy.
Well, I want to say thank you for not having a council meeting last month. We didn't have a lot of meetings and it was good for me personally, as my work life has changed a little bit, as I've told everyone. So it was nice to have a little bit of a break in those schedules we've become accustomed to. And thank you for what you were talking about in getting ready to buy things now. I mean, for my own work life, we're seeing stuff out 18 months. And so I think whatever we can do as a city, especially around in the public works area where these things, SandyNet is, and I'm sure Greg's listening too, but with all this ARPA funding going out there, a lot of these things are getting bought up and everywhere. And I know you see that in Happy Valley, I see it at work, but let's not wait on some of these things because what we're seeing is, 18 months, maybe 2 years on from vendors going, we can't supply it. Doesn't matter how much you want it. So And I hate to get in that boat where we're ready to do some work in the summer and we couldn't do it because we didn't have X, Y, and Z. I want to thank the skippers and Lundins. They're here today, but I had the opportunity on a very nice day to go and walk the property where 362nd was going to go down and where Bell Street would come on over and check that out and listen to them and had good conversations there. And I recommend, if you haven't done that, I think the offer is still there. He told me it was to meet up with them and walk that, because, it's one thing to see it on a Google map from, 100,000 feet up in the air down. It's another thing to actually walk it, and the beautiful property that they have down there, especially over the hill, that you never would have seen unless, you would have been trespassing to get back there. I know that they're from what they've told me, I think that still stands. You can give them a call or whatever. And but I think it's a good conversation to have and good to see where that road was. That's going to be the most important thing, our community has seen in 10 plus years on that, for so many other reasons why, I've been up here promoting that transit connection so many times. But anyways, I think that's all I have.
Great. I'll just reiterate everything that Jeremy just said on the project. Incredible project for this community come forward. We're very excited about that. Exciting night. We were swearing in, the opportunity to meet you. We have new faces joining our city every day, and lateral transfers from Oregon State Police. And I know it was heavily recruited, from a neighboring community. And it's just exciting to see wonderful people, accomplished people want to step up and in service to our community here in Sandy. And so I just wanted to thank those people again, and we're excited to have you. So with that, the Mountain Festival, I think we may have been able to give this report last time, but there's a lot of conversations going on right now, and we're very excited for that to come back. We had a little bit of discussion about the fireworks coming back, and now possibly the Mountain Festival. Carnival's looking good, parade's looking good. It's going to feel like a mountain festival. So that's incredibly exciting. And then just to close out, it's been a fun week. It's been an interesting week for yours truly. I'll say, Sandy's my hometown. It's where I grew up. I've known the people of this community my entire life. And so just the reach outs, not necessarily of support or opposition, just of caring and making sure that we're okay in my house. It's appreciated. And I love this community a lot. So with that, thank you, everybody. And I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.